I thought it was just another family dinner until my parents slid $40,000 worth of debt papers across the table with my name already printed on them. The worst part? They had been planning this ambush for weeks, complete with my favorite meal and fake smiles. What they did not know was that I had discovered their scheme 3 days earlier. And while they thought they were trapping me, I had already packed my entire life into boxes hidden in my best friend's garage. The revenge I unleashed that night would destroy their perfect family image forever and expose every dirty secret they thought was buried. By the time you reach the end of this story, you will understand why sometimes the only way to win is to disappear completely and let their own lies destroy them. But before we continue, check if you are already subscribed to the channel and write in the comments, where are you watching this video from? The dining room chandelier cast warm light over Mom's best china, the ivory set with tiny blue roses that only appeared for Christmas and funerals. I should have known something was wrong when she called Tuesday morning, voice syrupy sweet, inviting me for just a casual family dinner on Thursday night. Nothing about Mom was ever casual, especially not her dinner invitations. I arrived at 6:30 sharp, noting Dad's freshly polished shoes and the way Mom kept smoothing her dress. My younger sister Emma sat across from me, fidgeting with her wedding ring while her husband Mark checked his phone every 30 seconds. Their twin boys, 8-year-old Nathan and Nicholas, colored quietly in the corner with an unusual level of focus that suggested they had been specifically instructed to behave. "Pass the gravy, sweetheart," Dad said, his voice carrying that forced cheerfulness he used during awkward business dinners. I watched him pour wine into glasses that were filled too full, a nervous habit I remembered from childhood arguments. Mom kept glancing toward the kitchen counter where a manila folder sat beside her recipe box, positioned like it was waiting for the right moment to make its entrance. Emma finally looked up from her plate, meeting my eyes with an expression I could not quite read. Half apology, half desperation. The twins had stopped coloring and were watching the adults with the sharp awareness children develop when family tensions run high. Whatever was coming, everyone except me seemed to know about it already. "How's work treating you, Sarah?" Mark asked, clearly following some predetermined script. His question felt rehearsed, like he was buying time while Mom gathered courage. I answered automatically about my recent promotion at the accounting firm, but my attention stayed focused on the folder that seemed to grow larger every time I glanced in its direction. "Actually," Mom said, standing abruptly and retrieving the folder with trembling hands, "we wanted to talk to you about something important tonight." She placed it in front of me with the reverence usually reserved for birth certificates or wills. The First National Bank logo stared up at me from official letterhead. Dad cleared his throat, assuming his boardroom voice. "Emma and Mark need help with the boys' college funds. Private school tuition has increased again, and with Mark's recent layoff," he gestured vaguely, as if financial hardship was something that just happened to good people like bad weather. I opened the folder, immediately recognizing loan documents. $40,000. My name was already typed in the cosigner field, as if my agreement was assumed rather than requested. "We know you just got that big promotion," Emma said quickly, her words tumbling together. "And you don't have kids of your own to worry about, so we thought—" The implication hung in the air like smoke. Because I was 32 and unmarried, my financial responsibility apparently belonged to my sister's family. Because I had worked 60-hour weeks for 5 years to build my career, I owed my success to relatives who had never offered similar sacrifices for my education. The monthly payments would only be about $600, Mark added, consulting notes written on his palm. "Split between your salary and Emma's part-time income." I noticed he did not mention his own contribution to his children's future. Mom reached across the table, her hand covering mine with calculated warmth. "Family helps family, honey. Remember when you needed help with your college applications?" I remembered differently. I remembered filling out every form myself while Mom drove Emma to cheerleading practice. I remembered working weekend shifts at the grocery store while Emma got spending money handed to her every Friday. What none of them knew was that 3 days earlier, I had discovered their plan in the most humiliating way possible. My coworker Janet had cornered me by the coffee machine Monday morning, her face twisted with the particular satisfaction people get from delivering bad news disguised as concern. "I heard from my sister who works at First National," she had said, stirring sugar into her coffee with deliberate slowness. "Your family was in there Friday asking about your credit score and employment verification. They seem to know an awful lot about your recent promotion." The words hit like physical blows. Janet continued with obvious relish. "Bank officer thought it was sweet how involved your family is in your finances. Said they had all your employment details written down, including your exact salary." My stomach had dropped to somewhere around my ankles as the full scope of their betrayal became clear. I spent Monday night calling the bank directly, confirming that my mother had indeed visited, claiming she needed to verify my employment for insurance purposes. The bank officer, Mr. Peterson, had cheerfully confirmed my income and employment status, assuming Mom had legitimate reasons for her inquiry. "Your mother seemed so proud," he had said. "Mentioned you were helping with your nephew's education fund." Tuesday brought the dinner invitation. Wednesday, I started packing. By Thursday evening, I sat at their dinner table with boxes of my belongings already loaded into a moving truck parked 3 blocks away. My apartment lease had been broken, my job transfer to the Denver office confirmed, and my new life scheduled to begin Monday morning. They thought they were springing a trap. Instead, they were giving me the perfect opportunity to spring mine. "This is such a wonderful opportunity for the boys," Mom continued, her voice gaining momentum as she warmed to her prepared speech. "Private education opens so many doors. You know how competitive college admissions have become." She gestured toward Nathan and Nicholas, who looked up from their coloring books with the confused expressions of children who sensed adult drama brewing. Emma leaned forward, her eyes glistening with what I now recognized as rehearsed emotion. "We've been losing sleep over this, Sarah. Mark's been interviewing everywhere, but nothing pays enough to cover tuition and college savings." Her husband nodded gravely, playing his part in this carefully orchestrated performance. Dad tapped the loan documents with his pen, the same Mont Blanc he had used to sign Emma's car loan 2 years ago, when she wanted a newer SUV. "The bank pre-approved everything. They just need your signature and a copy of your employment verification." He said it like signing a $40,000 obligation was equivalent to agreeing to pass the salt. "We wouldn't ask if we had any other choice," Mark said, though his Rolex and Emma's recent jewelry purchases suggested otherwise. Their house had been refinanced twice for home improvements, including the swimming pool they installed last summer. But apparently, asking their successful sister to bankroll their children's future felt more comfortable than reducing their own lifestyle. I let the silence stretch, watching them exchange nervous glances. Mom's fork clinked against her plate with increasing frequency. Emma's laugh sounded strained when Nathan asked if they could have ice cream after dinner. The twins sensed something wrong but could not name it, their young faces reflecting the tension that filled the room like humidity before a thunderstorm. "You know," I said slowly, setting down my wine glass with deliberate care, "this is interesting timing." I pulled my phone from my purse, scrolling to the screenshots I had prepared. "Because I received some fascinating information this week about family loyalty and financial planning." Emma's face went pale. Dad's confident expression flickered. Mom's hand froze halfway to her water glass. I continued scrolling, taking my time, letting their anxiety build. For instance, I discovered that someone used Mom's contact information to access my employment records at First National Bank last Friday. "Sarah, we can explain that," Dad began, but I held up my hand. "I also learned some interesting facts about Mark's employment situation." I looked directly at my brother-in-law, whose face was now completely drained of color. "Turns out he was not laid off. He was fired for falsifying expense reports 3 months ago." The silence that followed was deafening. Nathan looked up from his coloring book, sensing the shift in adult energy. "Daddy, why is everyone quiet?" he asked. Emma quickly shushed him, her hands shaking as she reached for her wine. "Furthermore," I continued, enjoying the way they leaned forward despite their obvious discomfort, "I find it curious that this urgent college fund need coincides perfectly with Mark's gambling debts at Mohegan Sun Casino. Debts that total, coincidentally, about $40,000. Mark stood so quickly his chair tipped backward. "You don't know what you're talking about." But his voice cracked on the denial, and Emma's sharp intake of breath confirmed everything I needed to know. "Sit down, Mark," I said calmly. "We're just getting started." I swiped to the next screenshot, a bank statement showing multiple cash withdrawals from Emma and Mark's joint account, all made at casino ATMs. These withdrawals started 6 months ago, right around the time you supposedly became concerned about the boys' education. Emma's tears were real now, not the calculated performance she had planned. "Sarah, please, the boys don't understand." But I was beyond caring about their comfort. They had planned to trap me, to use my success against me, to burden me with debt that would take years to repay. "What the boys need to understand," I said, standing and walking to the window, "is that their parents are teaching them that manipulation and lies are acceptable when you want something from someone else." The twins had stopped coloring entirely now, their wide eyes moving between the adults like they were watching a tennis match. Dad finally found his voice. "You're being unnecessarily cruel, Sarah." This is still your family. His attempt at authority fell flat. After 32 years of his emotional manipulation, his commanding tone no longer intimidated me. If anything, it strengthened my resolve. Family, I repeated, turning back to face them. Let me tell you about family. Family is what I experienced when I worked 3 jobs to pay for college while you funded Emma's sorority dues. Family is what I felt when I graduated with honors, and you skipped the ceremony because Emma had a cheerleading competition. Mom's face crumpled. We were proud of you. But her words trailed off, because we all knew the truth. They had never been proud enough to prioritize my achievements over Emma's social activities. They had never considered my needs equal to their golden child's wants. Since we're discussing family obligations, I said, returning to my seat and pulling up another file on my phone, let me share some interesting discoveries I made this week. I placed my phone on the table, the screen displaying a detailed spreadsheet. This is a complete financial analysis of everything you've given Emma versus what you've given me over the past 15 years. The numbers told a devastating story. Emma's car payments covered by mom and dad, her wedding fully funded, her house down payment, a gift from their retirement savings, the private school tuition for the twins, supplemented monthly by grandparent contributions. Meanwhile, my college loans, paid entirely by me. My car, purchased with my own savings. My apartment deposit, scraped together from part-time job earnings. The total difference, I announced, watching their faces, is $137,000. Emma has received $137,000 more in family support than I have. Mark's mouth fell open. Emma's tears had stopped, replaced by something harder and more desperate. Dad's face had turned red, the color spreading from his collar to his hairline. We helped Emma because she needed it more. You were always independent, always capable of handling things yourself. The admission hung in the air like a confession. They had given less to me because I required less, punishing my competence with neglect. So let me understand this correctly, I said, my voice growing stronger with each word. Because I was responsible enough to fund my own education and career, I now owe it to the family to fund Emma's mistakes as well? The logic was so twisted it would have been funny if it was not destroying my future. Mom reached for the tissue box, but her tears seemed forced now. Theatrical. We raised you to be generous, Sarah, to put family first. But I had learned that putting family first apparently meant putting myself last, indefinitely, while everyone else's needs took priority over my own dreams and financial security. You want to know about family loyalty? I asked, standing and walking to the front closet. I retrieved a thick folder I had hidden in my coat pocket, documents I had been preparing for weeks. Let me show you real family planning. I spread the papers across the dinner table, pushing aside the loan documents like they were contaminated. This is my transfer request to the Denver office, approved last Tuesday. Their faces went white. This is my apartment lease, terminated as of tomorrow morning. This is my new lease in Colorado, signed and dated yesterday. With each document, their confident trap dissolved further. Emma finally found her voice. You're leaving? But we need you here. The boys need their aunt. Her desperation was genuine now, all pretense abandoned. The twins looked confused, sensing that something important was happening but unable to understand the adult implications. The boys need parents who plan for their future instead of gambling it away, I replied. They need role models who work for what they want instead of manipulating relatives into paying their bills. Mark tried to interrupt, but I was not finished destroying their carefully constructed narrative. This, I continued, pulling out the final document, is my new job offer. Senior accounting manager, 40% salary increase, full relocation package, starting Monday. The promotion I had been secretly interviewing for while they planned their financial ambush. While they researched my credit score, I had been building an exit strategy. Dad's authority cracked completely. You cannot just abandon your family responsibilities. But his words carried no weight now. His authority had been built on my compliance, and I was withdrawing my consent to be controlled. Watch me, I said, gathering the documents with steady hands that surprised even me. Since we're having such an honest family conversation, I said, pulling up my phone again, let me share some other interesting discoveries I made this week. I scrolled to a series of screenshots that made Emma's face drain of color. These are text messages between you and Mom from last month, planning exactly how to manipulate me into signing those papers. I read aloud in Mom's voice. Sarah always caves when we mention the boys' future. Make sure they're visible during dinner. Then Emma's response. Should I have them ask about college? Make it seem like their idea? The calculated nature of their manipulation was laid bare in their own words. Mark lunged for my phone, but I pulled it away smoothly. There's more. Including your conversation with Dad about timing this ambush right after my promotion bonus hit my account. Funny how you knew the exact amount, down to the dollar. Dad's face turned ashen as he realized how deep their scheme went and how thoroughly I had uncovered it. You don't understand the pressure we're under, Emma pleaded, but her words rang hollow against the evidence of their premeditation. Mark's debt collectors are calling daily. The school sent a final notice about tuition. We're desperate. Her honesty felt like too little, too late. Desperate enough to steal my employment information. Desperate enough to use your children as emotional weapons. Desperate enough to plan an elaborate deception to trap me into debt. I stood, gathering my purse, but not desperate enough to ask for help honestly or consider reducing your own expenses. The twins had stopped coloring entirely, their young faces reflecting confusion and fear. They sensed the adult world crashing around them, but could not comprehend why their safe family dinner had become a battlefield. "Mommy, why is Aunt Sarah angry?" Nathan asked, his small voice cutting through the tension like a knife. "Let me tell you what's going to happen," I said, my voice calm despite the rage building in my chest. "I'm going to make some phone calls tonight that will interest you greatly." I pulled up my contact list, scrolling deliberately slowly so they could see each name that would destroy their carefully maintained reputation. First, I'm calling Principal Morrison at Westfield Academy. I think he should know that the parents claiming financial hardship for tuition assistance just tried to manipulate a family member into a $40,000 loan for gambling debts. Emma's face went white. The boys' private school prided itself on family values and moral character. Then I'm calling Pastor Davidson at First Methodist. The congregation should know how Mark's gambling addiction is being funded through family manipulation, especially since you've been accepting financial assistance from the church emergency fund. Mark tried to speak, but no words came out. After that, I'll contact the bank's fraud department about the unauthorized access to my employment records. Identity theft is a serious crime, even when committed by family members. Dad's confident expression crumbled as he realized the legal implications of their information gathering. Mom reached for me desperately. "Sarah, please, we're sorry. We were just scared and didn't know what else to do." But her apology felt hollow after weeks of calculated deception. They were not sorry for planning to manipulate me. They were sorry for getting caught. "Finally," I continued, gathering my coat, "I'll be calling Mark's former employer to share some interesting information about his current financial activities. I think they'll be fascinated to learn how he's attempting to fund his gambling debts." Mark's face went from pale to gray. His firing had been kept secret from their social circle, but that secret was about to become very public. The next morning, I executed my plan with surgical precision. By 9 a.m., I had spoken with Principal Morrison, who scheduled an immediate meeting with Emma and Mark about their financial assistance application. "We'll need to reassess their family situation," he told me gravely. "This changes everything about their scholarship eligibility." Pastor Davidson was equally disturbed by the news about Mark's gambling and the family's manipulation tactics. "The church emergency fund is meant for genuine hardship, not enabling destructive behavior," he said. "We'll be suspending their assistance pending investigation." Their safety net was disappearing thread by thread. The bank's fraud department took my complaint seriously, especially when I provided evidence of unauthorized information access. "We'll be contacting the police about identity theft charges," the officer informed me. "Your family's banking privileges may be permanently revoked." Their financial reputation was crumbling in real time. By noon, my phone was buzzing constantly with increasingly frantic calls from Emma, desperate voicemails from Mom, and angry texts from Dad. But I was already 4 hours into my drive to Denver, windows down, music loud, feeling lighter with every mile that separated me from their toxic desperation. The final call came from Mark's former boss, Mr. Richardson, who thanked me profusely for the information about Mark's continued gambling. "We've been monitoring his activities since his termination," he admitted. "Your information confirms our concerns about his personal conduct. We'll be sharing this with his professional references." Mark's chances of finding comparable employment had just evaporated. I pulled into a rest stop somewhere in Pennsylvania, checking my phone one last time before blocking their numbers permanently. Emma's final text was a masterpiece of desperation. "You've ruined everything. The boys will suffer because of your selfishness." But the boys would learn valuable lessons about consequences and honesty that their parents had failed to teach them. 3 months later, I sat in my Denver apartment, mountain views framing my morning coffee, when Rachel, my old college roommate who still lived back home, called with updates that made me smile. Your family's situation has become quite the neighborhood gossip, she said with obvious amusement. Emma and Mark had to pull the twins from private school. Your parents' church friends are asking pointed questions about Christian values and family manipulation. The cascade of consequences had exceeded even my hopes for poetic justice. Without my co-signature, Emma and Mark could not secure the loan. Without the loan, they could not pay Mark's gambling debts. Without paying the debts, Mark's collectors became more aggressive, calling their home at all hours and visiting their workplace. Mark had to file for bankruptcy last week, Rachel continued. Emma's working full-time at Target now. Your parents are barely speaking to them because they're embarrassed by the public attention. The family that had demanded my sacrifice to maintain their lifestyle was discovering what actual sacrifice felt like. Most satisfying was learning that my parents' reputation in their social circle had suffered permanent damage. Mrs. Peterson told everyone at book club about your family's manipulation scheme, Rachel reported. She called it morally bankrupt behavior. Your mother hasn't shown her face at church in weeks. I sipped my coffee, watching the sunrise paint the Rocky Mountains in shades of gold and pink. My new job challenged me in ways I had never experienced, surrounded by colleagues who respected boundaries and understood professional ethics. My promotion had led to another promotion, and my financial freedom had opened doors I had never imagined possible. The guilt I had expected never materialized. Instead, I felt the deep satisfaction of someone who had finally stopped accepting unacceptable treatment from people who claimed to love her. 6 months after my escape, the ultimate vindication arrived in an unexpected phone call from Nathan, my 8-year-old nephew, using his school's phone during recess. "Aunt Sarah," his small voice said, "Mommy said you moved away because you don't love us anymore. But I think Mommy and Daddy tell lots of stories that aren't true." His innocent observation cut straight to the heart of everything. Through a child's clear vision, the family's manipulation tactics were exposed as the lies they had always been. "I love you very much," I told him honestly. "But sometimes adults need to live far away from people who try to hurt them, even when those people are family. Like when someone tries to take your lunch money?" he asked, his 8-year-old logic making perfect sense of adult complexities. "Exactly like that," I confirmed. We talked for 10 more minutes about Colorado mountains and his new public school, where he was learning that families came in many different forms and that love did not require financial sacrifice. Last week brought news that Mark had found work as a night security guard, finally taking responsibility for his family's financial situation. Emma had enrolled in community college classes, working toward a degree that might provide stable income. My parents had quietly moved to a smaller house, their retirement affected by years of supporting Emma's lifestyle. The family that had tried to trap me into their financial dysfunction was finally learning to function without my success as their safety net. They were discovering what I had known for years, that real strength comes from taking responsibility for your own choices rather than manipulating others into paying for your mistakes. Today, I received a card from Nathan, a drawing of mountains with, "I love you, Aunt Sarah," written in careful 8-year-old handwriting. It sits on my refrigerator next to my latest performance review and my Colorado hiking group photo, reminders that the family you choose can be more loving than the family you're born into. Sometimes the greatest act of love is refusing to enable the people who would destroy your future for their temporary comfort. Sometimes the only way to save yourself is to let others face the consequences of their own choices. And sometimes, the best revenge is simply living well while they learn those consequences are real. Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and your own financial survival? How did you handle pressure from relatives who expected you to sacrifice your future for their poor decisions?